Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book, this finger show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Gifted, the season premiere of The Flash, as well as the season premiere of Black Lightning. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of The Gifted, you can skip to what I had to say about the season premiere of The Flash, and or skip to what I had to say about the season premiere of Black Lightning. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of The Gifted. So there's a lot that went down this episode. First of all, let's focus on Marcos' situation. It's kind of interesting learning that little bit about his background. Turns out his dad kind of kicked him out. I mean, it's not kind of that crazy of a story. Everyone kind of have their family issues when it comes to mutant things. It turns out his dad's dying 6 years ago, still working with the cartel. He went to actually go check on his dad. It's like, hey, I can put you in a center. But his dad's like, no, I don't want any help from you. Your powers are satanic. How dare you come into the house of the Lord and everything? And he's just kind of like, really? After all that you've done, turning your back on your son, he's like, I gave you a choice. You either hide your abilities and you didn't want to, so I kicked you out. It's like, hide my abilities like mom did, huh? And the fact of the matter is, you drove her to an early grave, but at least your mother wouldn't have to be around to see all this. And it's just kind of like, man, could you be less of a douche? And ultimately, he's like, oh, when I go to heaven, he's like, heaven? We both know where you're going, and it's just like, ugh. So I'm curious to see what ultimately happened with that whole situation with Marcos. It's probably, I'm assuming it's gonna be a situation like his dad eventually did die from his illness, and then just Marcos probably left a lot of conflicted feelings. I mean, that's kind of part of the reason why he's pushing so hard when it comes to Lorna and the baby, because he doesn't want to be in that situation. He doesn't want to abandon a baby, which Lorna even tries to tell him. Lorna's like, no, you're not like your dad at all. It's what she tries to tell him. But I think that fear kind of drives him a little bit, because he's like, what kind of, no man just abandons his family like that. So it's him just trying to be there for his child, but also trying to be there even more so just to spite his father for just being the terrible father that he was, you know? So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, Marcos ends up getting brought there, which Lorna's kind of like, okay, I'll be able to handle it, because Andy's kind of worried. Because I think legitimately Andy, well, because it seems like Andy was worried both for himself and Lorna, because it's like, yeah, obviously Marcos is very important to you, but it's like, he's my friend, so it'd probably be a little complicated, because he knows how he would feel. I mean, he literally, in a previous episode, try to call on Lauren, so it's kind of like, you know, like he's afraid that Lorna would kind of fall under that pressure, and he knows probably what would happen if she tried to turn on everything. Even to the point Reba was like, kind of like, oh yeah, I said Reba was kind of like, hey, like, I need you to be there for me, because, like, you know, fighting an enemy is one thing, but fighting a friend is something else, and I need to make sure that you'd be willing to do that. But you can tell even Andy had his reluctance. Like, when the time came for it, like, to fight Marcos, it's not like he did. He just sat there and watching it, because he was like, I don't, he didn't do anything. He could have. So that's probably going to be something Reva ends up talking to him about later on, potentially. I don't know. But it was interesting, because I was wondering about the whole Dawn situation, because it showed in the recap at the beginning. It was kind of like, oh, if I had a baby, we'd name her Aurora. But it's like, in Spanish, the name Dawn would be Aurora. So I was like, oh, okay. I guess there's no, like, I guess like when translating stuff, there's like rough, like, equivalencies. So like Dawn in Spanish might be the same word as Aurora in Spanish, because there might not actually be a word for Dawn in Spanish. Maybe there is, but whatever it is, maybe it's closer to Aurora. It's kind of what I was kind of interpreting that, which I think that's always kind of the interesting thing about languages. There's not always exact words and phrases that translate well into another language. It's like, how do you translate? I'm going off on a tangent, but nevertheless, he's healing his baby with his light power, because like the baby has jaundice. There's also the question of like, oh, is your baby a mutant or not? Which is like, yeah, your baby's definitely got to be one, especially having two mutant parents. I feel like that's got to double up your odds. But it also seems like, okay, babies like coming into their powers isn't too much later in life, because I don't know X-Men like that. So I don't know if like there's a situation of like babies coming into their power at such a young age, I guess, because you're still developing, so the genes inside of you are developing as well. So it's a while before like the mutated gene really surfaces, I'm guessing. I mean, it took a little while for Reed's powers to kind of manifest themselves before. Well, his dad was working on him pretty early. Like, because it seems like Reed had some symptoms, because we kind of see little bits of it this season where he was like thinking back to when he was younger and he had headaches. Like, it might not be that his powers necessarily manifested themselves, or at the very least maybe he just doesn't remember. But So, I mean, who's to say? But I doubt there's been, I mean, like I said, I get the feeling like there's got to be a situation of a baby manifesting him to a certain extent. I mean, borderlines makes you wonder, like, what about David's situation? Because, I mean, David's had his powers ever since he was kind of like, he's had David from Legion specifically. Kind of makes you wonder about his situation too. It's like, well, that's kind of the whole Farouk situation too. So it's kind of like, is that really just his power? Was that the whole Farouk thing? That's like a whole can of worms all on its own. But he's trying to convince Lorna to come back because it's like, obviously because I think that's also another layer to this situation too. It's like, obviously he loves both of them. He loves Dawn, he loves Lorna, but it's also because he feels responsible because it's like, I didn't stop you when I had a chance 6 months ago, just because I thought, okay, everything, like likely people will get hurt if I just let you go. And it's like, I shouldn't have done that. I should have fought for you, try to convince you to stay, but I didn't. So that regret is driving him even more. I thought it was pretty powerful. Like he's getting dragged away. I was like, oh, come on, tell me you're going to fight Marcos. And he does. He fights back against like all three of the Frost sisters using their power on him. And like he ends up pushing them back, even burning one of them on the arm. I thought that was pretty impressive. And then the way they explain it later on is basically because like, yeah, they can implant thoughts in people's minds, but the thought of Lorna and Dawn were so strong because it's like, they're right there. My family's here. I'm going to take them back. That emotion, that conviction was so strong, it overpowered even their ability to manipulate him. I thought, I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, Marcos. And he tried to fight against Reva, which I did again, Reva. I keep saying with a B, like the country singer / actress, Reva McEntire. I kind of say it like that, but it's Reva. It's interesting because it, like, we get more of a display of her powers. It doesn't seem like it's just a disorientation. It does seem like it is like a sonic wave, but it seems like it can push other stuff back because even Marcos's power, like his hand was drifting back, but it's hard to say whether that was 100% because he was being disorientated, so it made him go back, but it looks like it also because she was pushing his arm back. And then his other arm, he kind of burned it because it seemed like he was about to heat up his arm, but it seems like she turned it against him. Like, as I guess, like before the light could really shoot out his arm, she was already sending it back into his arm, and so it burned him, which is like, woo, shows you how powerful she is. So it's like, it makes you, because I mean, they were saying it too. Like Evangeline was saying, like she's one of the most powerful mutants still kind of around, kicking and stuff like that, who survived 715. So it begs the question, like, when she really pushes it, like, is there, like, how would Andy's power stack against hers with the whole ripping? I feel like if anyone's power could probably stand a chance, maybe Lawrence, maybe Clarice's power too. I literally butchered her name trying to say it. Sorry. Just because of the way their powers operate, I feel like definitely Lawrence might be the real kick in the teeth. I mean, the whole Fenrir ability would probably be like the mega push, so it would probably be able to fight. But nevertheless, that's kind of going off. I thought that was pretty impressive. I was wondering if like his arm is going to be broken after that. I guess it was just burning it because it is light, so it probably just burned it. It probably didn't do enough damage for it to be like permanently damaged. So he's good. But Marcos is more intent now because he's like, oh, we're going to hit back, and we're going to hit back hard, because it's like, yeah, like, especially having seen his baby in Lauren, it's like, I'm going to get them back, and then we extra motivated to hit back hard. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where that goes. At the same time, we also had the whole situation with Reed. Obviously, he went with Lauren because there's that whole situation of like his powers and stuff like that. He's not telling anybody. And Caitlin was like, okay, take Lauren with you. Obviously, there's something going on there, which surprisingly, he didn't tell her about the conversation him and Lauren had last episode. And he's trying to make everything between them is okay, but then his power ends up activating. And it is kind of what I thought it was. I kept describing it. I was like, is it like a melting ability or a breaking ability, like, breaking stuff down, which I guess to a certain degree I was right on both accounts. It's the way Lauren described it's like a disintegration. It's like, that's the word I was kind of trying to compare his ability to. So that's a pretty interesting ability. Like I said, I still think that's kind of interesting how the whole thing works, considering like how the powers kind of manifest like that. They're different amongst the family members. Like, I guess the mutant gene just kind of mutates in very different ways. There's just because you are like this doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be. Because the whole push and the whole thought process is because of Lorna's ability. It's kind of like the person that clicks in your head to think who's her dad. It's like, it's got to be Magneto, right? Because I talked about that last season because the whole Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver being his kids have kind of been retconned in some comic books. So it's like, I don't know, like, if he officially has other kids in the comic books. Lorna / her other name being Polaris, like, she could be I don't know. But nevertheless, which led to a big discussion between Lauren and her dad, because he wanted to still keep it a secret, but she's like, no, secrets are bad. It's like, you're saying that, like, oh, you want to keep the secret because our family's in bad condition. Secrets are what led to our family being in this situation. Because she's like, years ago, like, I activated my powers and I said it was just mutants that happened to, and like broke some glass and stuff like that. It was some mutants attacking, and you came and said, and she was like, Dad, you came and said, like, don't worry, I'll protect you. It's my job to prosecute mutants. Not realizing at the time his daughter was one. So there's that whole situation of like, oh, I'm sorry I made you feel bad. But for her, it's like, I was so scared of hurting you, I didn't tell the truth. And she's like, if I had, maybe things would be different right now. Like, they could have been a little bit more prepared for what was the comments. Like, oh, if Lauren's one, maybe Andy was one. Maybe they could have kept an eye out for it. Like, they could have taken precautions ahead of time, you know, because Reed, even with the position that he was in, he would have never turned on his children. And that's obvious proof by the fact that we hear right now. And even Lauren's kind of like, who knows where we'd be right now, where I'd be right now, how things with Andy would be. Like, she's like, none of this probably would have happened if I told you that truth. So that convinces Reed to kind of finally tell Caitlin the truth. And now it's just kind of like, where do you go from here? Like, his powers are starting to come about. I'm very curious about that. Like, because, you know, Otto, like I said, was trying to permanently suppress his powers, but why now? Like, was it only a temporary solution, or did extenuating circumstances? Like, you know, it seems like mutant abilities are tied to emotions and stuff like that. The shock of losing Andy and stuff like that. Like, their family kind of falling apart. Like, because losing Andy is when the headaches started. So maybe that emotional shock shook loose the mutant gene in him. I mean, it isn't that easily gotten rid of. Depends on what continuity goes by, because if you look at the X-Men movies, it's kind of like, oh, you can just like snatch that right away. A cure for the mutantism, the whole thing, you know. So I don't know, but it is definitely going to be interesting. You see kind of Lauren kind of crying a little at the end, at being happy. So it's kind of probably a combination of like, yeah, things are good, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but our family's still a little messed up, broken, and just kind of probably still that thought process of like, maybe things would still be different. You know, that guilt is kind of a terrible thing to kind of have to hold, you know. Another thing that went down this episode is the whole John and Clarice situation, going to see Erg, which apparently there is like an even more mutant underground, because it's a city. They all put M's on them, which is, I'm guessing that's why we're getting the M's this season. Like I said, I mean, I'm sure it's just multiple things, like, you know, mutants, M, and also like Erg and his people. But it's a place for mutants to kind of be more free out in the open. Mutants that probably wouldn't be able to hide out in the like amongst humans, just because their mutation presents them a little bit different. Like, Clarice has to like disguise her eyes and cover up parts of her face to make it seem like she's a human, so she would kind of fit on that category. But you have like people like John and Marcos, it's like they just look like any other human with the exception of their powers. So, you know, so there's that whole thing. Also, I love how they handled like Clarice's powers too. And like, I just love like they kind of dive more into it, because it's like she was able to kind of see through what they were trying to hide, because she was able to use the energy to kind of rip open a portal, and that, because she was basically ripping open the energy that's kind of out there in the world, and she was able to kind of rip it open and kind of reveal what they were trying to hide. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. Like I said, it's just like little things here and there for like they're adding to Clarice's ability that they didn't really discuss at all last. Like I said, like I brought up previously, her whole eye situation and seeing energy. I don't remember her bringing that up at all last season. Maybe she did. Like I said, and my memory's just terrible, which it is. But yeah, Erg wanted to talk to Clarice because he saw her abilities, and he's like, okay, so I need you to be my spy above the ground. I'll help you if you can get me if you promise to be my spy, which, you know, Clarice is willing to do whatever, because, you know, trying to help fix this whole situation, get their friends back and everything. And it's interesting. You have to get the feeling like, oh yeah, that's probably going to come back, and like it's going to be something that's probably going to go against what her friends need, like what the Mutant Underground is trying to do, what's remain of it, what they're trying to do, like what she'll probably have to do for Erg might bring up some conflict of interest type of thing. So we'll ultimately kind of have to wait and ultimately see. And I mean, especially because they have that whole mutant underground situation set up, it makes you wonder where we're going to go with that. Because I mean, they might likely just switch over to the whole inner circle situation, just because it's like, oh, the inner circle is pushing more for mutants, and it's like they might kind of flow more with that ideology than what the mutant underground is, because it's like, oh, the X-Men, they didn't want freedom. They fought for tolerance. And you know what it means for people to tolerate? It means what do people tolerate? They tolerate what they hate. But at the same time, Clarice is kind of bringing up a point of, yeah, but it has to start somewhere. You know, it can't all be leaps and bounds. Like, it takes, you know, steps to get to a perfect world. At least it's something, and rather than nothing, you know? So ultimately, we kind of have to wait and see about that. But John also confided in her finally about the whole what's going on with him. And it's kind of interesting, like, because what ultimately resonated with him most was about the whole Evangeline situation was the two things she said. One, you failed. And two, Andy and Lorna you might have to kill them because there's no getting them out of the inner circle now that they're part of it, but which we don't 100% know that for sure, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front. But for him, it's like, it stems all back from the fact is, like, my failure led to this. If I was a better leader, if I had taken care of things, we wouldn't be where we are right now. So there's that. Then there's also the Jace situation, which surprised me because it was like Paula's not picking up. It's like, oh, what's that about? It's like, oh wow, you handled. I was like, wow, you're going neck deep in this stuff, aren't you? I was like, that's interesting because like last time we saw you were throwing away files and stuff like that. It's like you did a complete 180. But I guess it's like throwing away the files. It kind of sparked it in him. Well, because we also know that Marcos lit up the sky, and you know that was enough to kind of push him. Like, no, I got to do this. So Marcos doing what he did kind of set that in motion. Jace tries to go to a police station nearby to kind of help out. He's talking to the sergeant and everything. He goes to a crime scene. That's where the whole Lauren and well, not really crime scene, but accident scene where the whole Lauren and Reed situation happened. So it's kind of like, okay, like because he literally saw Lauren as they were driving away, but a sergeant's like, oh, you were fired. He was like, actually, I wasn't fired. You know, they tried to blame the whole Atlanta situation on me. And he's also like, oh, the fact of the matter is you're essentially saying that Jace is chasing ghosts, because it's like, he's the only one because now before it was kind of like theories and just like, you know, because it's like, oh, the only person with light abilities like that he's aware of is Marcos. He knew that the blackout might have had something to do with mutants and stuff like that. But now he knows that the mutant underground is still alive because of now he saw Lauren. Like before he wasn't 100% sure, but now he's 100% sure, but he's still kind of being chased out of rooms. So people think he's crazy. So it's like, hey, Jace doesn't have the backing that he had, you know, so there's that. But then we see that there's that one police officer he talked to, because it's like, hey, I lost my daughter in 715. And that made the officer kind of more be like, okay, I'm gonna see what the sergeant want to do. I'm thinking he must be someone that lost a family member during 715 too, so he's probably gonna be more inclined to help Jace. So he'll probably throw some police resources Jace's way to help him, or maybe he's gonna do a little off the book work, kind of vigilante work type of thing. Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see in that regard. But I do like because I think for a second I was like, oh man, they're gonna make Jace really just kind of go like, oh, he's really quitting that. I'm surprised. I was like, I kind of had a feeling he'd probably secretly do it. I just wouldn't expecting him to do a 180 literally the next episode like that. But that just kind of shows you how dedicated he is to this whole situation, just because, you know, he has his vendetta, which you can understand why, but you know, he kind of let his vendetta go, and then it just kind of got even stronger, because it's like the moment he let it go, that's when shit really hit the fan last season because of the Frost sisters. So that just kind of fueled his hate even more. It's kind of interesting, like, I mean, it's not like the inner circle is all that concerned about getting humans on their side. It's kind of like, we don't care what they want, what they're going to do. So I don't know. It's just kind of interesting how it all kind of like, you know, the domino and snowballs effect like that, you know. But like I said, I'm very interested to see where this all takes us in the next episode. And now moving on to the season premiere of The Flash, a great premiere. A lot of stuff went down in this premiere, so let's break everything down. First of all, the whole like Nora thing and everybody's reaction. She's going around her family like, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you, it's you. So it's kind of interesting. And I love the bit in the episode that Ralph doesn't remember He doesn't understand the whole time travel thing because he's like, wait, time travel is real? Everyone is like, really? Do you not pay attention in the briefing? He's like, literally no one has told me anything about time travel. Because even Wally's like, you haven't told him about the legends either. It's like, Ralph is neck deep in all of this and he doesn't know everything because it's like time travel. That's so season 1. I love it. And he's constantly figuring out, hey guys, I don't want to freak you out here, but there might be these mini-verse where it's like alternate timelines and everything. And everyone already knows about the mini-verse. It's like, yeah, it's called the multiverse. And he just feels so stupid and I love it because he's trying to figure this whole thing out. Because even later on, he's kind of like, okay, so if Eddie wanted to stop Eobard, why didn't he just have a vasectomy? Right. Not the right time for that. Thinking, it's like, I love you, Ralph. You're so good. Because this whole time travel thing was a lot for him to kind of process because it is a lot to hit you all at once. But like I said, Team Flash is so used to it. It's kind of like, yeah, we've dealt with this time travel thing not once, not twice, but multiple times. It's like, have they not caught him up with everything that they've literally been through? Didn't Iris talk to Ralph about the whole Savitar situation? To be fair, I don't think she went into as much detail. Maybe she, because even like, because she, she probably was like, oh, I know I was going to die. Maybe some other means, but probably they did probably explain it to him, but it missed. But for him not to know this much is like, nah. He had to, like, they couldn't have explained everything. They probably just assumed they did, or maybe just Ralph really wasn't listening because they love it. They're like, all these people, Gypsy, Harry, what did you think we meant when we said he was from Earth 2? He's like, I thought you meant Earth also. And they're kind of like, okay, that actually kind of makes sense why you'd have that confusion. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, I love Cisco getting a little drunk because it's like, I'm sorry. This was the first free moment I had to really take in, the whole me and Gypsy breaking up. And then all of a sudden your daughter comes in and just kind of takes the show. So I'm sorry that I had to take time for me. And he's just kind of passing out because he's like drunk. I just love it. It's just so much. Then the reality for Barry and Iris, like, our daughter is here. And it's just like, she's trying not to spoil the future because there's a whole thing about like, oh, and I love Barry's constantly messing up his suits in this episode because it's like, oh yeah, here's an old school one from in the back closet, and it's like, oh man, it's like, oh, this is so awesome. Even the security guards he saved are like, oh, you going old school today, Flash? Is like, yeah, it kind of doesn't fit. And it's like, oh, what about this one? Oh man, that's the one you used to fight King Shark in. It's like, oh man, that's pretty dope. It's like, I know you think he's evil, but wait till him and Grodd fight, and you have Cisco being like, spoiler alert, because apparently there's a Flash museum, and I thought it was kind of interesting because it's like, oh well, since you already know Gridlock's identity and everything, just tell us. It's like, well, actually, all the identities, the curator at the museum, Flash Museum, had to redact all of the names, scrub them because for was it legal reasons? I guess because it's like, if you're related to those villains that the Flash has defeated, might cause some problems. You might get some superhero prejudice because they're like, oh, you're the son or daughter or grandchild of that villain that the Flash fought. We're keeping an eye on you. So I guess it's anonymity for the rest of their family, anonymity for them. I guess because there's always a chance someone might go back in time and try and screw with that. So it's like, out of to prevent that, let's kind of scrub those records. So it's like, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of makes sense. I mean, considering the fact is, we also learned how Nora is from 30 years in the future. Because I didn't realize that at the time. It's kind of weird. I didn't know the actress who's playing Nora is 33. I would not have guessed that. I was like, because when I found out, I was like, oh, I thought you were in your early to mid 20s. It's like, okay. But that's kind of interesting. I don't know, not like it really matters, but it's just, I thought she was a little younger than what she actually is. So it's just kind of like, nevertheless, it's like, she's from apparently, 2048/2049. Essentially is what time frame she's from. So that's interesting. She hasn't let too much slip about the future, but I thought it was kind of interesting, Iris trying to bond with her and stuff like that. But even from the very beginning, it's something we're all kind of going into this a little bit, but you can tell things are a little weird and awkward between her and Iris. She's spending time with Iris, and Iris is like, oh, what do you do? Turns out she's a CSI, because she had asked stuff like, oh, are you a reporter? Are you a cop? It's like, oh, you're CSI, like your dad. Oh, no, did we spend a lot of time together and stuff like that? And you could tell she was being a little weird about it. I was like, things are awkward in the future, aren't they? Like, you're not really going into it, but they have to be. Like, things between her and Iris are. Well, because we end up finding out, because Barry kind of pieces it together. Like, there's a lot to digest about that situation now that I think it's so good. For one, the fact is why Barry's kind of a little weird around the Nora situation, because for him, so much of his life has been out of whack. Speedsters, metahumans, all the powers and stuff like that has pretty much thrown his life out of whack. That's why his mom is dead. That's why he spent his life growing up without his dad. He thought, hey, here I could have a normal situation with my daughter. Yeah, my situation isn't normal, but hey, like me and Iris, we can have a normal situation with our child. Even if they ended up developing powers later on, sure, whatever. But the fact didn't matter. Which, once again, they still haven't 100% brought that up. Once again, like how the whole metahuman gene really works or not. Like, did it ever cross Barry's mind to think that his child would be a speedster? I don't know if that conversation ever came up. I don't know if it's a concern or not. Because, like, metahuman kids don't really come up. Like I said, the only example of that is Black Lightning. That's the only show that's really, like, dived into that, you know? So that's what I just think is kind of interesting. So I don't know, you know, that all depends. I mean, Black Lightning's situation is a little bit different. Like, the circumstances around metahumans coming about, at least in Freeland's situation. But I've talked about that last season. But, you know, just kind of reiterating that a little bit here. But nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting. But it's like they don't get to enjoy the first of everything because it's like, oh, our daughter's first run, her first tooth, her first smile. You know, the things you enjoy as a parent, those first moments with your child. But then also it's like, but we're meeting her now as a full-grown adult. So we're like, everything in our family is kind of out of whack, which is like, hey, that's our family. Our family's kind of out of whack. But it's like, I wanted at least this one aspect of our life to be normal, but the universe couldn't give it to us. But for Iris, she kind of puts a positive spin to it because it's like, that just means we get this extra amazing aspect to our story because it's like, yeah, we're going to have our daughter, but eventually it's like, oh, we're actually going to know so much about her already. Which also plays into the whole aspect of time travel too, because it's like, just because you know so much about it, are you going to ultimately make her into who she is now going to be in the future because you met her in the future and now when she's growing up, it's like, oh, no, make her like this. Oh, let's try this. Like, you know, how much is going to be like, because they met her as an adult, they're going to end up pushing Nora to grow up to be like that. It's just kind of like the whole situation of like, oh yeah, like Gridlock. It ended up being Cisco who ended up naming him, but Cisco didn't realize, like, oh my God, I'm Fortune's fool because I just played into the timeline, you know, so I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But it turns out, and it's such an interesting thing, we finally get back to it, is the whole Barry is missing in 2024. It doesn't really come up. Like, he's been missing in 2024 since the beginning of the series, but now we're playing into it even more because it turns out Barry's actually still been missing to this day and where Nora's from. He actually, even in 2049, it's still missing. He's been gone for 25 years because Barry pieced it together because he's like, yeah, the way she's so giddy and so happy, she's just making any excuse to spend as much time with him. It's like, oh yeah, you and me, mom, we have all of our lives together, but she never said the same thing about Barry. And he figured like the way he was acting, like when it came to his life, is because he only had one parent around. He started realizing that's what Nora was kind of do. And it was like, oh man, that's so interesting. So it's not that Barry's necessarily dead, but I figured as much. Like, that was kind of my thought process. Barry couldn't have been around for her, like, to go through so much, like, why she would spend time here, you know, like I said, and I felt like that was probably the reason why she got to know everyone else too, because she must not have gotten a real good chance to really know the rest of Team Flash. And that's what I'm wondering about the whole Iris and her thing, because obviously things are a little weird because she makes excuses not to be around Iris. To be fair, it's like, yeah, Barry like wasn't there all her life because Barry was gone like a few years after she was born. So she did, like, meeting him at the wedding was like the first time she really got to meet Barry, you know? And so for him, it's even sadder because it's like he was so scared about screwing everything up with their first and everything. Like the whole conversation he had with Iris, and he literally wasn't even there for whatever reason. They don't know. Like, you know, that's why I'm wondering, like, the fact is that she's not like, well, no, because she referred to Cecile's kid as her aunt. So it's like she must still be like Team Flash must exist in some shape or form, because that begs the big question too. It's like, because obviously she knows about the future. So it's like, how did things play out for them? Because Barry's been going since 2024. So like, what happens to Team Flash? Like, that might be a situation where we see in the future in 2024, Wally's taking over as the Flash. That might be potentially what it is. And it also makes you wonder, where's Wally if she's the current speedster, like what eventually went down to make it so that she's the one kind of running things now. I also like her name being XS. The moment they pointed it out, I was like, it's a play on the word excess, isn't it? And it's like, yes, it is. It's kind of a tangent here, but it's like Ben 10. He has an alien known as XLR8. It's a play on the word accelerate, which I love, like puns like that. That's always been like, I always thought was kind of the most fascinating thing. But nevertheless, it's kind of pretty because she's the only one that actually has a pun for her name. I mean, I guess technically the others do too, like even Barry, because he's like the Flash, because like, oh, like going in the Flash, So maybe, but it's like hers is the most like punny of them all, So nevertheless, the most play on words, So, but I'm curious, and that's going to definitely be an interesting aspect going forward, like the whole her and Iris's relationship, because Iris is like, oh, I'm so happy our daughters are hot, but it's like she's going to be spending so much time with Barry, and that's probably going to make, it's definitely going to make Iris a little resentful. You kind of see it's like, oh, like she's not that close to me, and the question then becomes like, well, what kind of parent was Iris when Barry was going? Like Iris might have been the parent that was like very protective because like your dad's going, I don't want you mixed up in all of this, I don't want you taken away. She might have been like a bit of overbearing parent just because Barry was going, and it's just kind of like, I don't want to lose you. Like we don't know what kind of parent Iris was, so that might play a role in that. Like they must not be close for her to act the way she is, because even she's kind of awkward around Iris because Iris is trying to be hip and be like, oh, Shui. It's like, oh, that must be like a future thing or something like that. And it's just kind of like awkward between them when like she's like, oh yeah, I'm Shui, this is Shui, super Shui. She's like, oh, stupid. And she felt so embarrassed about it. I thought it was kind of neat because amongst everyone there, the only person she doesn't really get too close to is Iris. To be fair, when you actually think about it, even in retrospect of season 4, she probably, like, the person she avoided the most was Iris. So that probably plays a role in that. I didn't even think about that till now. I thought it was just because it's like, oh my God, you're freaking out because you're meeting your mom. It's like, no, just probably because things probably aren't good between you. So it's even more awkward to see her because it's just kind of like, yeah, this is your mom when she's like close to your age and everything. And it's just weird, So I don't know. I thought it was just kind of like a fascinating aspect. And I'm so interested to see that go forward, especially because Barry hasn't told anyone because he makes it so like, hey, Nora's staying, we need to, make sure our powers are staying intact and everything like that before we send her off. Because it's also about him, like, trying to figure out, okay, like, they got to find a way to find out what happens. I mean, they got to, what is it, 6 years to figure out what happened to him in 2024 before, so that he can be there at Nora's life, so while keeping that all a secret. Because that was also something I had brought up too, like, because that was another reason why I thought Barry wasn't around in her life, because it's like, Barry's had his experience with time travel. He would have implanted in his daughter's head, do not mess with time or you'll create a flashpoint type of situation, which for her is like, she's kind of says herself, she's like, I'm selfish, which even Barry can be like, no, I understand. I've literally been in your shoes, like when it came to my own parents. Like, I literally created Flashpoint because I wanted to save my mom. So I completely understand, So that's all interesting in itself. I did like the whole way Gridlock worked because I thought like the whole point was going to be like, oh, he absorbs electricity. So I was like, oh, you're kind of the worst person to go against him. It's, in particular, it's kinetic energy. Basically, any movement boosted his powers. So I did like that. What they ended up ultimately doing, like that 10-second window was enough to kind of stop him. All three of them phasing the airplane. I thought it was kind of interesting that Barry gave Nora the same speech that Eobard gave him. When he first learned how to phase. Which there's a lot to kind of digest about that. One, is Tom Cavanaugh going to be in this season and all? I have no idea. I don't know what Harry's going to be in this, because we know that Harry, Wells, because Harry went back to Earth to be back with his daughter. We know his whole situation last season, losing his smarts and his intelligence and stuff like that, but he's kind of happier now. So I don't know if they're going to get another Wells or not. Maybe not. We'll ultimately see, because there hasn't been one introduced, so I don't know. And two was an interesting thing. It's the fact is that, for one, since we're on the subject of phasing, they phased a plane. That's pretty awesome, because the last thing, I forgot, how did that situation work? I think they phased a rock, and a train went through it. They didn't actually phase or did they phase a train? I don't remember. Like Wally and Barry. I don't remember. But nevertheless, what's interesting too is she brings up a little interesting thing about the fact is how her powers work. Like she can't do everything Barry can. We haven't seen the full extent of what her powers are, but like when she's running, she talks about the fact is that she can reverse time a little bit. So it's like, that's interesting. Because before now, like Barry's had to do a full blown time travel. Like the least amount of time he's time traveled is like a day. Like that was back in season 1. But, for her to be able to do it to like such a probably a very minute like degree if she goes fast enough, it's such a fascinating thing to me. Also the whole negative tachyon thing, which I love her getting giddy about it. It's like, oh my god, this is the same thing Dad was wearing when he actually met Supergirl for the first time. I was like, dude, I cannot wait for her to be around, because obviously there's going to be a crossover this season. I hope she's around to get like nostalgic about everyone she meets. It's like, oh my god, it's the Legends. Oh my god, it's Supergirl. Oh my god, it's Team Arrow. Like dude, it's going to be awesome. Because her getting nostalgic about things hits your nostalgia, you know. It's just kind of funny how it all kind of works out together like that. But it turns out she faked it herself. It's like, oh, she's not actually stuck here. She just wore a device that infected her with negative tachyons, making it so she couldn't leave, you know. So there's also the Wally situation, because even like, oh yeah, Wally, you done with the Legends? He's like, I don't want to leave you guys. But it's like, okay, so Wally is going back with the Legends. Okay, because I was like, I figured as much. I was like, maybe he'll kind of bounce between the shows, because nothing in the trailers for the Legends seemed like he was there. But it's like, hey, he was there for the first episode of The Flash, so he probably won't be there until like the second or so episode from Legends. I don't know, maybe he will be. We'll kind of have to wait and see. But he had to explain to his dad some of his adventures with the Legends, which Nora kind of already knows about, Flash Museum and all of that. So that was pretty neat. Then there's also the whole situation with Caitlin. Turns out her dad isn't dead. He potentially faked his death, because there's just the whole like her being a metahuman thing. Also Ralph finding out about that. He's like, geez Louise, why doesn't anyone tell me anything? Because now I'm finding out that Killer Frost is potentially gone, but now it's like, oh, there's something a lot more to that. Her dad, why would he fake his death? You know, because obviously, because it's like, that's the thing, like, she must be like a science experiment going wrong or something. Like he must have done something to try and save her life, and that created Killer Frost. So Killer Frost might be a more, because that's the thing. She was a metahuman before metahumans, which is like, that's kind of interesting. Especially, I mean, there might be something more to that too. Maybe someone went back in time and that led to a metahuman first being created. Because like in this world, the oldest metahuman started back in 2014 when the particle accelerator exploded. Once again, that also brings up the conversation of like, oh yeah, what about Black Lightning? Because we're still like, we don't know where that continuity stands, because it's like, it's not actually part of the Arrowverse. It's kind of its own thing. Like I said, whether or not that'll join up later on, still unclear, but nevertheless. So that's going to be another big mystery going forward in this season. Also, like the ring situation. I think seeing it made me remember it, the way everyone was acting. The ring thing has never come up before. I think that was like Eobard or something, right? Like, didn't he kind of have that kind of pop up one time? So maybe that's when I remember, because I was like, because I brought it up before. I was like, didn't that ring situation happen before? But maybe I'm thinking of something Eobard related. So I'll probably see a lot more of that. And also appreciate the fact that he's getting a new suit every season, because he got it like 1 and 4. Now he's getting another one at 5. And it's just like, and he's like, damn, Gina, did I make that? And then Nora had to break it to him. It's like, no, Ryan Choi actually made that suit. So that's pretty dope. That's kind of interesting. Makes you wonder how old that suit is, because it can't be that old, because we know he's missing in the future. So that might be one of the last suits he wore. Not unless it was something someone just happened to make, someone who's a fan of the Flash or whatever. I don't know. Maybe we just kind of have to wait and see on that front. I wonder would they at any point in time actually travel to the future, because do know that is an aspect to this that hasn't really been touched like a lot. It's happened a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm curious to see if that's something we dabble in. I mean, time traveling in general is a big no-no. I'm curious to see, we'll see Jay this season, because he's probably going to have a lot to say about that. Like, yeah, you really shouldn't be having your daughter here. It'd be kind of interesting, because like I said, we never found out about it, but like remember Jay was kind of like, oh, he was taking on a new apprentice. That would make sense why she'd go to Jay for training if that was the case, because it's like, well, she was a speedster already in her own future, but like, to be fair, like she said, like, I can't do everything Barry can, so maybe she was trying to learn from Jay. Like, I kind of figured as much, because it's like, yeah, you wouldn't want to run it, like, get training from your dad. It'd be weird and awkward to add a lot of questions. I didn't even notice that initially because I only caught the purple, but it's like, no, she's got the yellow lightning from Barry too. So it's definitely like a little bit of what's in Barry and a little bit of Iris in her too. So also just kind of a little note we have, yeah, Barry's back at work. That's awesome. A little behind on work, but still. There's also the fact is that they no longer have the Starlab satellite, which is an interesting thing. Just a little like aftermath of DeVoe doing what he did, because now they don't have their eye in the sky, so they're probably going to have to rebuild their system because it's going to make it so harder to keep track of a lot of metahumans going forward. They kind of already set that up in this premiere episode, so they're always going to be a little behind when it comes to things. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Well, Nora kind of might have a lot of stuff roadmap because she talks about the fact that she heavily studied it, because learning everything she could about the Flash Museum, because she's like trying to learn everything about the father she didn't really know, you know? Because it makes you wonder if it was a subject that Iris never really wanted to talk about. And even if she did, it's like seeing firsthand and knowing firsthand is another thing entirely. And then we get a little bit of our villain. Because that was a big question too. Is like I think the villain's name is supposed to be Cicada. It's like what his whole deal is like, because he's carrying around that bolt of lightning. So it's like, okay, is it another speedster? I don't think he is. I think he probably has that dagger which has red electricity in it, so maybe it has the power of a speedster, but maybe it's like a localized weapon. So like if it's in a certain area, it can affect time. If you hold on to it, you can move fast or affect the flow of time, either speed yourself up or just affect a general area. Who knows? But that's one kind of wondering, especially because he's wielding it like a blade. So I don't think this thing is a speedster. Don't feel like it. It looks like it might be taking the powers of a speedster, but it's like, oh, like Gridlock was like, what do you want? He's like, all of you dead. I'm assuming that's metahuman, so this thing might be a metahuman hunter, which is going to be interesting. Maybe he's one of a kind. Maybe there's like others like him. Like what that whole deal is. Like, is this, someone from the future? Or is this like a timeline change because of Nora? A lot of questions. We would just kind of have to wait to get answers. Like I said, I'm so excited for this season. I'm so excited at the flashback. I'm so excited to see where this season story takes us with all of this. Also, final side note too, I also forgot to talk about this. Let's not forget Cecile still has her powers, which Joe was kind of like, yay. Also, the whole lounge situation, everyone's like, we had this here the entire time. Oh yeah, Joe's been here since day one. This is where he comes to nap. He didn't want no one to know about it, but Nora knew about it. So it's like, hey, this will be where I chill. Because she doesn't want to stay with her parents. Because I think it's more so like, probably, she didn't say it, most likely living with her mom is probably a circumstance she's probably not all that keen about. But like I said, we'll have to wait and see about that too. So. And now moving on to the season premiere of Black Lightning, a great season premiere, great way to start off the season. A lot of stuff that went down this episode. We got to break everything down. Picking up pretty much immediately where season one left off, we kind of face the consequences of season one. I like that. It's kind of interesting because you even had like that title card thing at the beginning. I'm wondering, is that going to be something they do the entire season? That'd be pretty cool. I mean, like, there's that logo intro title card, sure, but like before that, it said the episode title and all that, which like none of the other DC shows have that, so that's pretty neat. But it's interesting because like that's the entire premise of this is consequences. There are consequences for everything that went down because of everything that Black Lightning and Thunder exposed about the pods and everything that the ASA was doing to the people of Freeland. Now everyone knows green light's running rampant on the streets, and that makes everyone nervous because green light equals metahumans, so people are not being treated right. There was already a problem between the community and the police brutality, that whole situation, but now it's been escalated even more because of green light. And all the while, this whole situation is just tearing the Pierce family apart. Jeff's dealing with the backlash of like, oh, you weren't here as principal. It's like, oh, you weren't here during the attack or after the attack. It's like, maybe he would, I guess because, he kind of gave some excuses that weren't good enough, but it's like, come on, man. He was dealing with his own family emergency and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I mean, to be fair, it's just a situation of they just needed a scapegoat anyway. I like that conversation he has later on with Napier from the board, because it's basically like, oh, they want to invest money and stuff like that in metal detectors and guards and guns, but what about in books and making sure that teachers get higher pay or core computers? It's like they want to fix these other situations because they want me to, they want me. And the biggest problem was that fact is that I never treated these kids like criminals, because I never went with how I never gave looked at things the same perspective that they did, and because I came from it from a more optimistic point of view, that already kind of put him in a bad light when it came to the whole board anyway. So now his job is on the line, all the while like he's having a problem with Lynn, because Lynn is stuck in this complicated situation, because it's like she's neck deep in all of this. Like things were bad enough with the whole Black Lightning situation, but now she's got to worry about her eldest daughter, Nessa, running around as Thunder. Then there's the whole Jennifer situation of like, your baby is got powers of her own and she's out of control. She's even recommended like maybe, Jennifer should go to therapy, even saying later on maybe Jeff should too, because Jeff has gone through a lot, but also Jennifer is young, like everything they experienced last season, because Jennifer ends up bringing it up. It's like, oh yeah, mom, you shot someone. I potentially electrocuted some people. They might be dead. Gamby literally killed somebody in front of us. It's like, yeah, that's a lot to kind of just like, it's kind of interesting, because when you think about it, season 1 made it seem like everything was okay. And I think that was the point. It's like to make it go okay, because in season 1 off on kind of this happier note, like, oh yeah, we won, just so they can come back with the next season and like sucker punch you, hit you in the gut, and make it go, yeah, you thought that was all happy, it was perfect, it was going to work out perfect. It's like, no, there are consequences for every action that is taken. And so now they have to suffer with all like the decisions that they made. Because Lynn wants to work with, the pods, because it's like she studied green light, so she understands this better than anyone. But you have Agent Odell being pissed at her, like, I know you're lying. You're lying about everything. You're lying about Proctor. You're lying about how you came across the bodies and stuff like that. It's like, well, for one, how can you blame her? Because the ASA is technically the ones, not technically, are exactly the ones behind this whole green light, meta epidemic in Freeland. And on top of that, like, it was one of your agents that did all that, but it's kind of like, nah, Proctor kind of did that by himself. But it's like, who's this? I mean, it seems like it was, because later on it's kind of like, oh, it was kind of a rogue operation, but maybe it's kind of like, no, like the ASA had their feel of it, but then like Proctor kind of went off and kind of wanted to handle things on his own. He wanted to do his own thing. So that just turns a conflict. It's just them covering their own tracks in the situation, because they've kind of been dragged out into the light. They didn't want to be, because they were one of those secret, probably government organizations that's like, yeah, now they got this stigma associated with their name, because it's like, yeah, you turn this community upside down. So there's that. Anissa wanting to do more, but her dad being like, no, because it's like, we got like Cyanide, Khalil, and Tobias are still out there. They'll strike at any moment in time, but they're just waiting for us. So we have to always be on guard. Like, let the system do some, like, as much work as possible, because I like his thought process, because it's like, we act outside of the law. We will always fight to protect the people of Freeland, but there's us to a certain point we have to step aside and let the justice system work, because if we don't let the justice system work, show that it does work, people will lose faith more and more into it, and we need that system to survive. It might be flawed, but when the time comes, we will need it. And if people don't have faith in it, if they just rely solely on Black Lightning and Thunder, who won't be able to solve every issue, that the system is there for a reason. Like I said, it might be flawed, but the system is still there for a reason. Checks and balances type of thing to kind of keep order and everything, while Freeland's kind of spiraling in that chaos. Because we see Anissa's robbing drug dealers and probably people benefiting from this green light thing, just trying to get the money so that people, like, because they're planning on suing the government, because the kids are being kept, the people in the pods are being kept as property, because it's like, yeah, we got to figure out what their whole situation is. And it's like, to get your family members back, you might have to sue the government. They're going to need like well over $500,000, but we see Anissa's kind of dumping the money off. It's also interesting because she's not doing it as Thunder per se, but it makes sense, because it's like, yeah, because if she was dressed as Thunder, it'd draw too much attention. Like, she's kind of a celebrity and everything, one of the heroes / vigilantes of, Freeland. So it would have drawn too much attention. So if she's in disguise, less likely to draw in like Tobias, Cyanide, or Khalil's attention. So there's that side of things. But you also see that she's doing it more and more. And once again, consequences for everything. She hasn't suffered them yet, but eventually is going to come back to bite her in the ass in some shape or form. It might be the fact is that eventually all that money gets trailed back because a lot of questions are going to start being asked soon. Like, where's all this money coming from? This money was by illegal means. Maybe the cops will come in and confiscate it all, and then it kind of undoes all Anissa's doing. And the fact of the matter is, the more and more people she's hitting, the more and more people are going to be on the lookout for her. Yeah, she might be bulletproof, but that doesn't mean they won't set traps in preparation for her. So it seems like she's almost kind of getting that high because she wants to do more for Freeland. So she's trying to do her thing while Jeff is saying, like, we need to stay low. But at the same time, it's like, well, Jeff is more focused on revenge than he is helping the city of Freeland, which, I mean, at that same time, you can make that argument. It's just, he's conflicted because it's like, Tobias is the main man buying everything. It's like the man who killed his father. So obviously that's going to take a lot of precedence for him. But it's also like, yeah, they're going to be coming after my family too. So I need to make sure I protect my family. So that plays a big role in it. Like it's a lot, like being pulled in a lot of directions. Like going back to the whole Lynn situation, for her, it's like she's the only normal person in the family and all these other superpowered people around. But it's like, that's so much like Jeff. Yeah, Jeff was Black Lightning for a long time. And he's had these powers for a long time, so he's had a lot of time to adapt to it. Anissa and Jennifer, Anissa's a lot more welcoming to it, but even she's still, a freshman in this situation. The same thing for Jennifer, so it's a lot for them to handle, plus all that, because Lynn's like, even if she controls her powers, that won't mean anything if her mental like her mind is in turmoil and like her mind is all over the place. So that won't help in that regard. So Jeff telling her not to get involved in all of this, which she's like, because he's like, okay, it's a good thing you don't get involved because you're in your lab, working's in the lab. She's like, don't tell me where my work is. I think it's more so he was trying to say like, hey, like you work in a lab. I don't want you to get caught up in this big fight and stuff like that because this isn't your cup of tea. This isn't your area. But for her, it's like, it is my area now because I've become just as involved in this situation as any of you. The fact of the matter is you want to use your powers and abilities for Freeland. I want to do the same thing. I might not have powers. I might not be in a funny suit or have a funny name, but the fact of the matter is I'm smart. I know what I'm doing. I'm a researcher. I can help this because I want to help this community, because if I don't help solve this situation soon, like Freeland's going to implode. It's going to tear itself apart with this like divide that it's caused amongst people, Then there's the whole situation with Jennifer. That's a complicated can of worms all on its own because it seems like her powers are manifesting more and more. I guess it's because she's always kind of kept her powers kind of more reserved. Like Anissa's flexing her power muscles. Jennifer isn't. So I think maybe because she isn't continuously using her powers, it's kind of leaking out. Like it seems like, well, her big thing is like she stores energy. That's how her power operates. So she's constantly storing it. So probably if she doesn't constantly let it out every once in a while, it has it will manifest itself in different ways. Like, for example, making her float in the middle of her sleep. In all honesty, there's like a little bit of like, there's this beautiful serenity to her power, just how it looked, the little sparks flying around almost like fireflies, and just like her being kind of caught in like a little orb of her power. Like there's like some beauty to it, But like I said, it's just her powers are obviously tied to her emotional state too. Then at the same time, it's like because everything that's happening in the media is just kind of putting a negative light to metas. Even her friend Keisha is like, oh, they're all freaks. Immediately my brain can't help but go like, oh yeah, think of like, well, it's a little weird mentioning the show now. Kind of have to make hesitation, but kind of like Smallville, the whole meteor freak situation. So it kind of makes me think of that to a certain extent. Because it's like even your friend is kind of looking at metas in a different light, and it's kind of like, if she found out you were one, would she treat you any different? Like that's the big question. Even though that's like your best friend, she'd probably still treat you like one, considering that she's calling all these people freaks. She's saying it's the end of days and stuff like that. So also getting called from Khalil, which is going to be weird and awkward because I guarantee you the next time Jennifer and Khalil meet, because it's like, yeah, like Khalil, you kind of killed my dad, Well, you put my dad in a position to be killed. So it's like, I don't know if I can really be okay with you. It's like they had their connection. They were best friends for so long, then more, and just that spiraling got super complicated. So now it turns into that situation of like, well, what's going to happen in that regard? Like, because I get the feeling like when they meet again, her powers are going to activate. Then he'll probably put two and two together. I mean, either he'll just think like, oh, she did green light or whatever, or maybe he'll piece it together like, oh, your dad's black light, because he doesn't know that before he help Tobias kill him last season. So it's like, I'm curious. Like, I think Khalil is probably starting to regret things, or maybe he figured some stuff out and now he's like, no, 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 no. Like, I don't know. Maybe there's a part of him that's still in there that is like, because we saw it a little bit last season, like there was still some Khalil in there. So it seems like that side of him might be reaching out, trying to reach out to any normalcy, to Jennifer to kind of pull him back. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see what happens with that. But kind of going back to what I was saying before about Jennifer's power being kind of like she absorbs energy, like she's storing it up. Like Jeff was able to absorb it to like kind of nullify her powers, but it does seem like it is temporary because it seems like the moment she went to sleep, it starts storing up again. So maybe if she can clear her mind and calm her mind, it may control her, learn to train and control her abilities, which we all know amongst everyone, she's the least wanting to use her power, which is interesting because like, Len made the whole comparison of like their powers being kind of like an addiction because, Jeff kind of has an addiction to it, but it's kind of interesting because Jennifer doesn't. But I guess that's just because of the way her power works. It kind of works in opposition to who she is because her power is what it is. Like, it doesn't matter if she's not addicted to it or not. It's still going to do its own thing anyway. So other things to kind of bring up about this episode, there's the whole Kara, right? The vice principal situation, her and Side Night going at it to a fight, gunfight, then melee fight with Kara using her heels with blades in the bottom of the heel part of the shoes. That was impressive. Also was actually surprised she ended up killing Cyanide. I didn't expect that. I was like, oh no, Cyanide's going to come back. Oh no, she's dead? Is she dead? I was like, I don't know about that. I mean, who knows? I mean, Tobias brought Lala back, which he didn't pop up this episode, but I mean, we'll see. Maybe he can bring... I mean, I don't know. I mean, what he used to bring Lala back, wouldn't he be able to bring Cyanide back? Because wasn't Cyanide's situation a little different? Wasn't her skin something else? But maybe, like, that blade is thick enough to pierce, like, whatever. Yeah, because Cyanide has, like, stuff under her skin. Like, that was kind of like armor, but I guess, like, it was enough to pierce that to kill her. So, I don't know. That's why I was kind of, like, I was halfway expecting her to kind of pop up later on. Kara goes to Gamby and is like, yo, help me out. I know where the briefcase is. I'll try and help you. You need to get me out of here in the ASA. I guess with Proctor disappearing because she doesn't know what's going on with that. So it's like, okay, so she might be thinking the ASA is cleaning house. So there's that plus, everything that's going down in Freeland. She's like, I got to get the hell out of here. So now it's hitting Jeff because it's like, man, oh man, I trusted this lady. We were so close because it also seemed like, last season, it seemed super clear that like she had a thing for Jeff too. And it's like the person I trusted most in all of this turns out she's an enemy. She's a bad guy. So that's going to complicate things, especially where the episode ended in that regard, because we ended up finding out that she ends up going up against Tobias, and Tobias shoots a hook through her. I was like, oh man, she's about to die, especially when he's like, oh, I'm about to skin you. I was like, this isn't going to be pretty. But she managed to cut free, and I'm like, oh, please don't fight Tobias. Oh, you didn't. You jumped out the window. It's like, good. But then she's going to turn to Gamby / probably Black Lightning, which then will probably lead her. I don't know if Jeff's going to be willing to let her know who he really is. Probably not like that. Who knows? She might even just come to Jeff in general because she's like, oh, you're the only person I can trust in this whole situation. Maybe. We'll ultimately see. Because I think ultimately she thinks the only person she can rely on in the situation is Gamby. So we'll see kind of how that ends up turning out. Because it does make you 100% wonder what was in that suitcase. Like, I figured I thought it was something with green light, hence why green light's kind of spreading even more. But the way Kara said it was like, because what she said was it was hell inside of it, and she didn't realize it was a rogue operation. So I guess it was like Proctor's way of trying to take over like the ASA, trying to like amass an army and amass a powerful enough position where it's like, oh, look at all the great stuff I did in Freeland. Bam, I'm running things now at the ASA. Potentially it was kind of a power play type of thing. So there's that. Also, it was also about covering up all the terrible crap he did. So it was more so that probably than a power play. But he was probably being put in, he's like, oh, I can be put in a higher position, but I got to make sure my closet's clean before all that and get rid of all the skeletons in my closet type of thing. So we'll see in that regard as well. Like, well, we won't know because he's dead now. So there's that. And that's Lynn getting asked all those questions. She gets on the project because Gamby did everything for, but then like, Odell's kind of like, no, I'm gonna look into that for you. Don't you worry about it. So he's gonna be a hard ass to deal with. He's gonna be a complication because the last thing she's gonna want is him investigating too much into any of that, especially all this leading to her family too. It's like, they're the main reasons why she's doing this, because Jeff had brought up the concern with all this bad press with the metahumans. Eventually, the people will eventually turn on, Jennifer if they find out, but on Anissa/Thunder and him, them being metahumans. Once again, it's like, you're heroes for now until, the public opinion can sway very easily. So there's that. Then there's also the fact is, because the whole green light thing is spreading like wildfire, there is more metahumans. We see one introduced this episode is that boy Issa, who came back from the dead, which, to be fair, is very similar to Lala's situation, but his is different. I'm assuming just because of all the stuff that his mom said, and everyone be like, even his sister was like, what the hell are you saying, Mom? Because she's like, oh, I'm happy you died, because I knew I didn't have to worry about you anymore running up and down the streets doing green light. And I'm assuming his power forces people to tell the truth. That's what I'm guessing. So he's kind of on his own. So the question then becomes like, who's going to get to him first? Is it the ASA, Jeff/Black Light? Like, we might see him have to step up his game to be a mentor for other people. Hell, we might even see Anissa kind of take that under her wing to kind of take other people under her wing, like, because now Jeff isn't just about protecting the city, he's even protecting the city from itself. So like protecting these kids who are just kind of left on their own, like, which if his power is making people to tell the truth, that's going to be kind of a complicated thing on its own, but we'll see. The other big like gut punch this season immediately is like, oh, Henderson's like, you're Jeff, aren't you? And it's like, oh shit, snap. He knows that Black Lightning and Jeff are the same person. He pieced it all together. It's like, and he's kind of pissed about it because like in all these years we've known each other, we've been friends for so long, and now I find out all this stuff about you because it's a complicated situation. Him being a cop and everything, and you being a vigilante and stuff like that. But at the same time, you're his friend. You can't help but feel complicated in that situation. It's like, where did they go from here? Because even Jeff was kind of like, in all honesty, I could have denied it, but it's like, for what's the point? I got tired of lying to him. It's like, he's a good man and he's my friend. But even Jeff's like, the biggest concern for him is like, the people who find out about him being Black Lightning end up getting hurt. Never his intention, but that's just how it works out. So it is a very serious episode altogether. I do love the little kind of jokey bit between Lynn and Jeff about the whole like erectile dysfunction thing. That's really what made Black Lightning's powers kind of go a little nuts. That it's like, oh, you are a man of a certain age and stuff like that. And he's kind of looking at her like, woman, you crazy? I love that. So they are, like I said, things kind of tore them apart a little bit, but they're trying to like make sure that the family stays together all throughout this. So Jeff also losing his position potentially as principal because he's willing to sacrifice it, because it's like, he's like, you said it yourself, Nate, you're like Black Lightning and Thunder. I'm trying to do whatever it takes to save this community, not my job. So might not have that balance anymore. That depends on what Jeff ends up doing in the grand scheme of things. Like, he'll be fired as principal, his name will kind of be run through the mud, he'll be the one to kind of take on all the blame. It was all for the purpose of making sure that the school stays open, because these kids need to be a place that could set them on the right path, give them kind of another option instead of like running the streets essentially. So with all of this happening, I'm so excited to see what they have in store for season 2. Like, they hit this off running of being like, bam, consequences. I love that type of thing of like I said, especially because season 1 had that happy ending of like, oh yeah, everything worked out. Yeah. And season 2's premiere is like, not quite. There are huge ramifications. It's kind of like, even when you try to do good, you always kind of end up screwing up in some sense, which legitimately kind of works perfectly with every other DC show too, because it's like every other superhero has that issue of like, you try your best and it just kind of ends up backfiring in your face in some shape or form. So I am very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good